What I'd like to talk about a little bit today is automation. Let's talk about it specifically around compliant provisioning and automation. Looking back at a lot of the organizations that I've talked to and processes that I've worked with in the past, people just think automate, and then they get everything done. Well, the problem with just simple automation is it doesn't take into effect all of the different areas of risks and importance that need to be involved within those automation flows. It really starts with role design, number one. When you look at upgrades and the shifts between different product versions, for example, it was interesting because I was talking to somebody about the other day. If you move and you're moving from house A to house B, you don't take all the junk with you. So why would you bring all that along with you to the new instance? So you want to have role design. That role design is really important from the perspective of it also needs to be about zero trust, least privileged. You don't want to assign roles that are going to give people additional risks that cause you more concern on the back end. So that's one of the reasons why role design is really important within compliant provisioning, and having those roles dialed in to where that authorization is exactly what's needed for that point in time for that particular user. Another area when we get into the provisioning side of automation is really about that joiner, mover, lever process. It boils down to the fact of how am I going to do those things? One of the sides that I like to look at is onboarding. I spent a lot of time in HCM through my career, so onboarding is a challenge for many organizations. How can I get the people access to what's needed at the right time so I can onboard them and get them productive in a very quick manner? It's all about using those roles that were designed up front and then enacting them so that they can move quickly. So one of the things that I like to look at is giving them that base employee role, because as you hire somebody, they basically have two jobs. One, they're an employee, and two, they're also somebody who is paid to do a job. Well, those are two very different, distinct functions. When we look at roles and authorizations that they have as employee, they need to be able to do things like dependents, benefits, payroll, all of those types of things that are core to their role as an employee. Those are also least privilege style roles, and you can grant those very, very quickly. The high privilege roles, for example, typically need an approval. So that's where I like to have that differentiation, because the approval side of it's going to help with audit, tracking, and it's going to be followed up on. So when they have that additional request for access, and you can do that through request, there's going to be the logging, the tracking, and the auditability of that. So it helps differentiate between those two steps. What's important as well is including inside of those roles SODs, separation of duties. So we have to have the ability to understand where the risks are with our organization. Am I giving that user authorizations to perform those risks? That's why the role design is very important, and you can't just provision them anything. You don't want to give them, something that's going to increase the risk for the organization as a whole. So SOD has to be brought into that process flow and be able to look at all of the transactions and authorizations that that user may have. That's why I call it compliant provisioning. Another area is to follow up, because basically it's you grant them the access, you have the adjustments to those, you can look at the SODs, you also need to be able to understand what that user has. So that's where you bring in the user access reviews. Those allow you to understand the authorizations that user has and what utilizations they're actually accessing inside of the system. So that's where logging comes into effect, those user access reviews. So you can specifically see, oh, Jimmy over in HR, for example, utilized benefits, he utilized payroll, he did this. Because having that actionable intelligence through the logging information gives you value within those user access reviews, because now you can make the choice intelligently based upon should Jimmy have that access or not, based upon the usage of those particular authorizations that he was given in the first place. So really the combination of those 5 areas of compliant provisioning, having the SODs, doing the role design, coming in from the UAR on the back end, and then also the logging to complete that life cycle is really what happens with automation. That's the end game of where you want to get to, because it will drive your organization into a very compliant provisioning model that you can move forward through across all of your application sets.